Hello, and welcome to our third episode, which happens to be our June episode of our monthly Election Connection video series. I am Scott Jarett.
And I'm Valenzuela. We are your elections directors for Maricopa County. Each month, we'll have a new episode of Election Connection,
where you, the viewers, can submit questions to us, Ray and I, where we will answer those questions. And today, we have a very special guest joining us on Election Connections. It is Janine Petty. She is the Senior Director for Voter Registration for the Maricopa County Recorder's Office. And I know we, as the Elections Department, are incredibly fortunate to have her serving in that role. And you as the voters are as well, because she started with us, I believe it was about a year ago. Is that right, Janine?
That's correct.
So prior to joining our office about a year ago, she served and worked with the Arizona Secretary of State's office, where she worked for several different administrations, both Republican and Democrat administrations. And then prior to that, she was an election official with Yavapai County. So if you don't know where Yavapai County is, that is just north of Maricopa County, and the city of Prescott is within Yavapai County. Any other cities that are your favorite cities from Yavapai County, Janine?
Sedona. Sedona is very beautiful. Thanks, Ray and Scott. Happy to be here. Happy to be your special guest today, and looking forward to answering some questions from your viewers.
Okay, Janine, then I have a first question, and it's for you. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
But before we do start, I want to give a little bit of quick layout of the format. Even though this is our third series, normally these episodes, we take questions and topic determines who answers the questions. But since we have our special guest, Janine, and unbeknownst to her, we're going to put her in the hot seat and have her answer all the questions. Is that okay, Janine?
Yay.
Perfect. Yay.
I'm just teasing, actually, but consider that initiating to, and welcome to the show, if you will. So our first question is a voter registration related inquiry. So Janine, I'll ask of you, and that question is, I haven't received a new voter registration card. Am I still able to vote?
That's a great question. And I'm sure that there are probably a lot of voters that will be asking this question as we are gearing up for the primary and general elections. The short answer is you do not need to have your voter ID card in order to vote. However, your voter ID card or voter registration card is a very important piece of information. It basically confirms for the voter the information that we have for that voter on our voter rolls. So it is highly encouraged that you do get your voter ID card, and we have an online option for folks. They can go to beballotready.vote, log into your personalized dashboard, confirm the registration information that we have on the rolls is accurate for you, and you can even print off a digital voter ID card there as well.
And since we had a question about voter ID or voter registration cards, thought we wanted to alert the voters that all voters should be getting a new voter ID card here in 2022. And the reason for that is because the Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission went through and redrew all congressional and legislative district boundaries. So that means that every single voter is now in a new boundary. And because of that, that means that we need to send out a brand new card with that new congressional and legislative district boundary to every single voter. But I also then have another follow-up question for you, Janine. Here in the Elections Department and the Recorder's Office, we're always striving to improve. So our continuous improvement philosophy. And one of the new improvements that you introduced for the department and for the voters of Maricopa County is to provide some voter registration cards with some new formats. So can you describe what those new formats are and what voters can expect?
Sure, Scott, happy to. We are super excited. We did basically give our voter registration cards a facelift. Voters will notice there's some coloring there. We got some bold new designs. We have 5 different versions of voter ID cards, and it's basically dependent upon the status of the voter. So whether or not you're on our active early voting list, or maybe you'll get a postcard as part of your voter ID card that you can send back to get signed up for the active early voting list. In addition, there's a lot of really good information for the voters about upcoming elections, and a really important one is about how to get involved. There are a lot of options. Voters want to get involved. They can work at the polls, come in and be a volunteer, and really get to understand the excitement of elections.
Well, I'm thrilled that you highlighted poll workers getting involved, because one of the responsibilities I have is to hire all of the temporary workers that support the election. And for the upcoming primary election, we have over 3,300 temporary workers that will be working, 2,700 poll workers, about 700 central board workers. So when you get that new voter registration card and you get that information, go to getinvolved.maricopa.vote, and that you can find out how to come and work the elections alongside Janine, Ray, and myself. So I believe the next question is actually for Ray, not Janine. So Ray, that question is, and it comes from an independent voter. It says, if I pick a party ballot, will it change my party?
Another great question, and applicable, because obviously we're upon the primary where that matters for independent voters. So the quick answer is no. So in other words, as an independent, you select whether you want a Republican, Democrat, or city town only, and I'll explain that real quickly a little bit. But first that is just for this election. So it will not modify your political party by selecting one of those options. But just to clarify that the August primary is an open primary. So for those voters that are Republican, Democrat, or Libertarian, you will automatically get that ballot. And the August primary is a nominating election. So your Democrats are nominating the Democratic candidates, Republicans nominating the Republicans, Libertarians nominating Libertarians. However, because again, Arizona is an open primary state, independents or unaffiliated voters can participate by selecting the ballot they want to nominate from. And again, it will not change your party, but we need to know that. And this is really important because we have a lot of able voters, as Janine lists and noted about the card, active early voting list, formerly permanent early voting list. But anyways, these able voters that are independents, we can't send you a ballot automatically for the primary because you need to pick. So I want to hopefully echo that the process is open to you, but we do need you to tell us which ballot you want. And I'm going to put a little bit of plug in there that most of you voters that are on the ABLE list, active early voting list, would have gotten a card already that allowed you to pick a party and send that back, but you don't have to do that. You can also have gone to request.maricopa.vote. One more time, request.vote, and do it online. So even if you're not unable and you want a one-time request for a ballot for the primary independent voter, you can go there, make that selection for the rep, the Dem, or city town only. And I just want to make sure you're aware that I purposely didn't say Libertarian because Libertarian Party has closed their primary, so only Libertarians can participate. But as an independent, you can select, again, the Republican, Democrat, or city town only ballot. There are 23 of the 25 cities and towns that are in Maricopa are holding an election. So as an independent, you may say, I just want to vote for my local measures or candidates. You can do that. So again, sorry for the little bit length, but I wanted to add some edification to that. And the answer is it will not change your party affiliation by selecting a party as an independent.
And and those, for our viewers, just interesting tidbit is our independent voters actually make up the largest voting bloc in Maricopa County. They recently surpassed, I think, just over 34% of the entire electorate are registered as other, so party not declared or independent voters.
That's such a good question. So all of you out there that are in that large demographics, make sure you know you can participate. And if you don't do it through mail, you don't have to. When you go in person, whether it's in person early or in person on election day, you will have that option to select that party ballot. So it is open and available to you.
Okay, so I think we're going to ask Janine the next question, right, Ray? Not me?
We're just going to leave you out of the loop completely, Scott. No. Actually, so you don't feel left out, we actually have one last question, and Scott, I'll go ahead and ask this to you since it is under your purview. So the question is, will Maricopa County offer ballot drop boxes in the August primary election?
And again, this is another great question, considering that we're...
That was from me, Scott. That was a question for me.
I knew, Ray. I knew you would ask that question. So, but the reason it's a great question is because we are less than a month away before early voting begins. And also because there has been a lot of inaccurate and misinformation being spread about drop boxes. The first thing I wanted to highlight is who can drop off an early ballot into one of those drop boxes based on state law. The state law then allows for the voter themselves to drop off their early ballot. And it doesn't have to be just in one of our drop boxes. It could be in any U.S. Post Office box, or if they have their outgoing mailbox. But it could be also then a family member, and that family member can live with the voter or they don't have to live with the voter. It can be a household member, so they don't have to be related by blood, but just living in the household, or it can be a caregiver. So any one of those individuals by state law is allowed to drop off not only their ballot, but then that other voter's ballot as well, as long as it's inside that signed affidavit envelope. The next thing is there has been a lot of information about the security of drop boxes. And we take drop box security very, very important here in Maricopa County. So we make sure that every drop box is locked and secured when we're transporting those early ballots in that signed, sealed affidavit envelope from those drop boxes to the elections department. It's always done in bipartisan teams. And then we're documenting all of that through chain of custody forms. So voters should have confidence that if they use those drop boxes, that their ballot will be returned to us securely, and there's not an opportunity to inject other erroneous types of ballots into that process. So the last thing I want to describe is, yes, we are going to be offering drop boxes for the upcoming August primary and November general election. So one thing for voters to know is they can drop off their ballot at any one of our in-person vote centers, because not only can voters vote in person and get a ballot, we will have one of our early ballot drop boxes. So for the August primary, we'll have upwards of 210 vote centers that we'll be offering to voters that will be open on election day. We will also be doing a phased in approach through the early voting process. We'll have 10 vote centers that are open on 27 days before the election. We'll have then another 45 approximately locations that will open up about 12 days before election day. So any one of those vote centers can be used to drop off the early ballot. But in addition to those vote centers, we will be offering some standalone drop boxes. We have 2 that will be outside. One is outside the Maricopa County Elections Department. It is securely fastened to a concrete slab. It is under video security monitoring. And that will be available for voters for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, starting the first day of early voting. And we'll have a very similar drop box outside our Mesa facility that will be open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, starting the first day of early voting. And then both of those close at 7 p.m. on election night. But in addition to those 2 standalone drop boxes, there are approximately anywhere from 15 to 10 city and town clerks' offices that will be offering drop boxes within their facilities. The reason I say 15 to 10 is some of those city and town clerk's office, they open as a drop box site on the 27 days before the election, and then they transition to a vote center. So I believe there's 15 that open that first day of early voting, and then 2 weeks before the election, 5 of those transition into a vote center. So still available as a drop box, but they're not a standalone. They'll be offering in-person voting as well. So voters can go, and we will be having our website, a brand new website, going live next week. And that's when we'll be updating our website, and voters can find out all the hours of operation, where these locations are, where the drop boxes are at, locations.maricopa.vote.
Thank you, Scott. And I want to elevate one thing that you mentioned about sealed in the envelope. A lot of kind of misinformation, disinformation is that people hear, oh, ballots are being dropped up in these boxes. They're not loose ballots. They're sealed within an early affidavit signed, and it must be received by us sealed in that envelope. So these are you dropping off for yourself, your husband, your wife, your family members, but they all are sealed. So that transport to us. And then on top of that, 100% of all of those are signature verified against a voter's known vetted signature that we have on file. But that sealed part in an envelope is important for information. With that, this concludes our episode 3 of Election Connection. Thank you for tuning in.
And don't forget to register for our Just the Facts newsletter. You can go to justthefacts.vote, sign up, and that's how you submit questions for us to answer next time. So
I
thank
don't
you
want
very
to forget to thank Janine, obviously, for joining us and allowing us to initiate her to our show. I'm going to call it the show. So, but with that, thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.